And let's return to our earlier story now about National Party launching its law and order policy. The leader, Judith Collins, joins me now. Good evening, Judith. Can you just explain to me what specifically makes this a law and order policy launched by National, led by Judith Collins? What specifically is your touch on this policy?
Oh, well, obviously big emphasis on rehabilitation in prison, but also more of the alcohol and drug courts, which is something that I brought into New Zealand in 2012, having seen them in the United States. That more of those, a commitment to those, more of them. But I think also, basically, there's a big focus on victims and the victims of crime. I'm also not worried about going after the gangs. I think it's a very important thing that we do. We've seen a big increase in gang numbers, and we need to knock them on the head.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. A dedicated gang unit is what you're saying. How would it work?
Well, it would work in actually utterly targeting gangs in terms of their numbers, giving police the powers, such as with the firearm prohibition orders, to go into their gangs' heads, take the guns off them. I think that's one of the big reasons where people have felt very much as though they have been let down by the government in terms of firearms, with law-abiding people feeling that they've been targeted, as opposed to gang members and those focused on them. But another big issue, which you could really say is a me thing, is the mental health initiative around mental health nurses working with police in what we used to call watch houses, which are now called custody suites.
Right.
That is something that starts in counties Manukau. The current government got rid of that. They've stopped that funding, and we are bringing it back and extending that out. So you could also say a social investment model around...
Well, social investment was a Bill English policy,
Yeah.
so let's stick with what you were talking about with the gangs, okay?
Yeah.
I can't understand how this would be different from the organised crime unit that the police run in the major centres, and also they have a dedicated gang unit in Auckland. So what makes this different to what we already have?
Well, they will have more powers that we will give them on that. So obviously the firearm prohibition orders, but also in response
But gang members could be ruled out from owning a firearm, possessing a firearm, by the character tests in terms of licensing. So So we already have it, don't we?
No, well, really seriously, Lisa, you don't actually think that they all go around getting licenses, do you? I mean, really, seriously? No, they steal guns, or else they have people who do have licenses who sell them to them. That's what happens now. And it is, that's how it happens. They don't just go and get licenses, although there are some who have got licenses, and that's something that should be a character test. If you're a member of a gang, patched member of a gang, how can you possibly be able to get a license to have a firearm? In addition to that, when you talk about the off-cans unit, which is what you're talking about, that was started up when just before I took over in 2008 as police minister. It was one of the last dying things of the previous Labor government. That was all, instead of having a serious fraud office, we kept the serious fraud office and we kept the off-cans. But we also know off-cans is only in the major city centres. So it is important, for instance, when we found out just recently...
So will you have a gang unit in every town and city?
Where they're needed. So where we had... Hawke's Bay had 2 members of a gang unit. How is that effective? That's not fair. But also, they will be able to have we'll have tougher parole conditions for gang members. We will make an aggravating factor in the Sentencing Act to be a patched gang member or associated with them.
Can't a judge already take that into consideration? The judge can consider those aggravating features in sentencing. And also...
But we will make it an aggravating factor. We will also, we'll have new criminal offences targeting the violent gang crime and introducing tougher offences for that. We also think it's important to ban all gang insignia in public places. What we're seeing with this proliferation of gang members, 34% gone up in patched gang members in the last 3 years of the current government. That's an enormous number, about 2,000 extra patched gang members. We've got people being intimidated in the streets by these people, wandering around with all their insignia on. I think it's really important that we make it very important that we have a dedicated gang unit to disrupt them.
Okay, I want to talk about that gang insignia a little bit more, but before I do that, can you just quickly answer, will this gang unit, will they be armed?
Well,
routinely armed?
Obviously, no. What you need to remember, obviously not within the office, it's very important to understand, Lisa, that when I was Minister of Police the first time, we gave police the power to actually, we gave them the funding to put lockboxes with guns in their cars so that your frontline officers already have the ability to arm themselves at their discretion. What is important is to understand is that they're not playing tiddlywinks here with these packed gang members. These people are violent. They're, in some cases, they are methamphetamine users.
Hence my question, will you allow them to be routinely armed? That is different to having a Glock in the glove box or in the well of the car and a gun in the back drawer in the back seat.
You're confused, Lisa.
So are you going to...
You're confused on this issue. Routinely arming is for all police officers, and that's not where we're going. It is utterly important, though, that I tell you that the Special Tactics Group and the Armed Defenders Squad already are armed in their work. That is natural that they will be to do so. If the gang unit needs to have arms, they will have them. They will have access to them if they need them. It is not for me to tell them to put arms on because they're, popping down the dairy. That won't be happening. It is absolutely important that we back the police to do the job that New Zealanders want. New Zealanders are sick and tired of people sitting in ivory towers telling them who should be wandering around their streets and who should be intimidating them. It will not happen with us. We are going to stop this, and I'm not going to stand by and let it happen to New Zealanders.
Lots of people have tried to stop gangs before, and indeed you did, and the previous national government tried as well. So in terms of gang, but they're still here. That's the point. So in terms of gang insignia. In terms of gang insignia, so you don't want patches. But I'm wondering, where is the line there, Judith? So obviously some of these gangs are producing clothing, not just a patch on your back, but tracksuit pants and sweatshirts that have various more subtle indicators of gang affiliations on them. Where do you draw the line?
Well, clearly, it's going to be in the detail, but obviously it is important that we don't have this sort of intimidation happening in our streets.
So where will you draw the line, though? Where will you draw the line?
Well, I'm not going to be choosing someone's tracksuit trouser colour, but I am going to be saying very clearly that we are not going to have intimidating paraphernalia from gangs being used in this way. So patches, no, gone. Do we tell people they can't have leather jacket? No, that's not correct. But we do say, you have patches, you have the sort of paraphernalia that is absolutely associated with it. It is not going to be acceptable. I understand that there'll be some people who will say, oh, that's so unfair. But you know what's unfair is having to live next door to people like this. That's unfair, and being intimidated in your business or on your way about in your work by people who are violent thugs, who, by the way, have increased their numbers by 34% under a particularly soft-on-crime government. And I'm not putting up with it, nor should New Zealanders.
Let's move on to Mr Michael Woodhouse. Has he apologised to you for misleading you about, and the public really, about the homeless person he said who got a free ride at isolation and shouldn't have been in there?
Well, he's been very clear to me that he has not misled me. He said, I've raised with him the issue that your reporters this morning raised with me and said that the Official Information Act request, I think it said that the government said that they couldn't find this person. Well, okay, so they couldn't find someone. Doesn't mean to say it doesn't exist. Michael Woodhouse has been very plain to me that the information he had was from a senior medical practitioner who he absolutely
professional, I think his words were, wasn't it, Judith?
Well,
a senior medical professional. So is that the same? Okay, so is that the same senior medical professional who leaked him the details of the COVID-19 patients?
Well, I don't believe so at all, and he's been very.
Have you specifically asked him that for clarity?
I have been very specific. Are you absolutely certain this person is correct? And he has said yes. So he has confirmed to me.
Did you ask him to say who the source was so that you can confirm it wasn't someone else who had leaked information, incorrect information or bad information to you?
I did not ask him for a source any more, Lisa, than I ask you for your sources. It is very important that when people provide information to the opposition genuinely and correctly, that we are not going to go around outing them for it And obviously,
the issue is correctly here, though, isn't it? Because there is no evidence to support it. In fact, there's evidence to the contrary, which shows someone who of no fixed abode returned home in a flight and took up his place in managed isolation as he was entitled to.
Lisa, the information I have is exactly what I've given you, and that is the information I have. I'm not going to doubt the word of my colleague. He has been very clear with me that I can trust his word. I take people at their face value and their word unless I have very good reason not to. And in this case, just because the government can't find something doesn't mean to say it doesn't happen.
So what conversations have you had with Roger Bridge about these allegations of alleged dirty politics?
Well, I haven't had any conversations with him. I understand the board of the National Party is meeting today, and that there will no doubt be a decision made. And I'm not having those conversations. It is very important that I am being utterly focused on policy and the people of New Zealand. I can tell you, Lisa, outside the media, absolutely nobody cares about the internal workings of the National Party. And today, the only people raising the issue have been the media and no one else.
You are a board member of the National Party, so you have also come out strong saying that you are against, you want a clean campaign, you don't want dirty politics. So
yeah.
Are you happy with Roger Bridge's alleged behaviour?
I'm going to tell you exactly what I've told other media today. I do not approve of this behaviour. It is not something I would do. I do not approve of it. It is now a matter to the board, and that's what I'm prepared to say.
And you're part of that board, so would you like to see him gone?
All my discussions will be with the board. I won't be having them with you, Lisa, even though, it's so tempting to tell you everything that I might do. I'm not going to.
Well, let me put it another way. Are you happy to work along a person who has, indulged in dirty politics?
I think it's very important, Lisa, that we leave the matter to the board. That is the correct place for it, and I'm not going to talk about the matter anymore. I'm happy to talk about policy, and I'm happy to talk about decisions, and I'm very happy to talk to you about my decision that I will be absolutely voting against the cannabis referendum.
Okay, just before you go, Judith, have you had any discussions with Mr Woodhouse specifically today about the new information that's come to light in terms of the so-called homeless man?
Yes, I have.
And
he has confirmed to me that the information that he has previously given to me is correct.
Okay, and so you're voting against the cannabis referendum then?
Absolutely.
On what basis?
On the basis that it's recreational cannabis, sale and use, that we have, it is not medicinal cannabis, as some people have been misled to thinking. It is absolutely not something that people who care about the mental health of New Zealanders should be setting up a decision up there, the decision that tells younger people in particular that this is something that won't do you any harm. We are already facing a major meltdown in terms of mental health. That's why I put such a focus on mental health in the policing area and corrections. It is not at all, I think, in the best interest of New Zealanders for us to legalise a drug which does cause, in some people anyway, quite difficult mental health outcomes, and it is not something that I'm going to be supporting. And the National Party caucus has decided not to support it at all.
So you will vote, basically it's not a conscience vote anymore in essence. When they go to the referendum, everybody's going to vote this way. The
whole National Party caucus has agreed that we will not be voting for the cannabis referendum. Cannabis in the National Party is in the Misuse of Drugs Act. Misuse of Drugs Act has never been a conscience issue in the National Party. In my time in it, I've always known it to be a party position, but I can tell you that the caucus is unified. Was that a captain's call, though? Was that something you put to them? Not at all. Not at all. The caucus was very strongly of that view, even before I became the leader, and I absolutely support that. Really appreciate you joining us and hope to talk to you more about your other policy launches. That is the National Party leader, Judith Collins.